today. So welcome to everyone joining us today for this edition of Author Talk. My name is Aaron, and today we have Tina Muir and Zoe Rome to talk about their book, Becoming a Sustainable Runner, A Guide to Running for Life, Community, and Planet. Just a quick background that I'm aware of. Tina is a former professional runner representing both Great Britain and Northern Ireland in her career, and now runs her own business for runners in St. Louis, Missouri called Running for Real. You can listen to her podcast where she has conversations about running and climate issues, among other topics, and has featured guests like David Epstein, Kara Goucher, and Malcolm Gladwell. She's published articles in Runner's World, Self, and Women's Running, among other places as well. Zoe is the editor-in-chief at Trail Runner magazine, a managing editor at Women's Running, and a writer, host, and producer of the DNF podcast. So those are only a few of their highlights. They're both very busy and accomplished women. But again, I'd like to welcome you both, and thank you so much for spending part of your day here today.
Yeah, thank you.
So I gave a little bit of information there about both of you, but I always think it's more interesting to hear directly from you. So if you could just give the listeners a little bit of your background and kind of your journey as far as like how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Zoe, do you want to go first?
Sure. So,
Okay.
I just, always grew up being really interested in writing about the outdoors and the environment and figuring out a way to storytell around big challenges like climate change in a way that speaks to more people, that brings more people into the conversation, that's more focused on sort of human connections and solutions as opposed to data and doom and gloom and these things that tend to isolate people from the very important work that he's doing. So when I graduated from college, I moved to Boulder to pursue a master's degree in environmental journalism. Around the same time, I started getting more serious about trail running and becoming really curious about how outdoor and adventure sports like trail running, climbing, ice climbing, like whatever people like to do outside, how that can be a really potent entryway into these larger stories about our environment. And so I worked at NPR for a year before joining Trail Runner magazine, which is now part of the Outside magazine sort of family of brands, and have just been really encouraged at how outdoor sports sort of give us this doorway into talking about climate. And yeah, that's where I'm at today.
Yeah, I would say for me, you mentioned that I come from an elite running background. Environmental, having a passion for seems like a funny way of explaining it. But I've always been very interested, always kind of wondered what I could do to get other people to think about the like environmental side of things a lot more. Those have always been two things that have been of interest to me, but I felt like the first part of my athletic career when I was an elite athlete was very much me, what do I need, what do I do? And so since I quit professional running back in 2017, I've kind of been on a mission to give back. What can I do to contribute positively to the community? How can I be more thoughtful and intentional and have a love for my sport and my life beyond just like, what can I achieve? What can I do? And so that's kind of where I've been the last few years, coming from a place of highly competitive to still now edging into the competitive world, but how can I keep a more holistic and, balanced approach to my life? As well as as Zoe and I do, finding ways to connect with other humans within our communities, with our planet as a whole. So, mine comes from maybe trying to swing the balance back the other direction after feeling like all I did was take.
No, understandable. I mean, when you're competitive, I mean, you have very specific goals and you're very focused there. So this is a very interesting book, and not like most running books. I mean, that there are a number of great running books. I mean, we've published a lot of them as well that have, like specific training plans, tips on running form, that type of information. But this book digs deeper into kind of the running community and culture, and making sure that I guess from my perspective, what I got from it, making sure that it keeps progressing and keeps progressing in a safe way. So we'll get into the details of the book in just a moment. But for you guys, what does it mean to you to be a sustainable runner?
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it means staying in the game long enough to realize your true potential, as opposed to limiting it to just one race, one season, one outcome, even 1 year.
Okay.
Beautifully said, Zoe. I don't know if I can follow that. I think, yeah, I mean, Zoe said it. I think it also is just, as we talked about or said a minute ago, like encompassing all those elements and realizing that when you bring those things together, you bring other people, you bring connections, you bring the planet, you bring a long-term view. You're leveling up everything. A rising tide lifts all boats, rather than thinking, as Zoe said, about one season, one thing. We just do better as human beings when we work together, when we take that long-term approach.
Okay, very good. Now, why, like I said, we'll get into a little more of the details, but why did you feel that this was the time or that this was the right approach to write this specific book and to get this information out there?
Yeah, I think it's very much on people's minds, and I feel very aware that not most people, but the large majority of people are well aware that not only is climate change happening in here, but feel a lot of anxiety and stress inside. We all have those fears of the future. What is the future going to look like? We're starting to see glimpses of it. And most of the time we feel like we have to just like, go down. No, don't talk to me. Stay away, stay away. And you stuff it down. And so really, but as with anything, when we try and stuff things down, they don't go away. They just fester inside of us. So it felt like the right time for us to bring something out that gave people hope and allow people to feel like they were part of the solution, not always feeling like everything you do, you're just part of the problem. You're just like, there's nothing you can do that is good enough in any element of your life. So we felt like there was so much, there's a lot of doomism language that's pushed out there, combined with like la 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 la. So like, couldn't we give an option for people to feel like they can do something, they can be positive influences on the world, and the time just felt right for that. So yeah. So
I think the time is always like, there's no like good time, there's also no bad time to talk about this sort of thing. Like, if you're always waiting for that opportune moment, you're never going to be able to have the tough but very necessary conversations that you need to have. So I think we just wanted to like just get a foot in the door whenever we really could, because if you're waiting for the perfect time, I think a lot of times it's just going to be too late to talk about these things, right? And I think that like when it comes to the sort of individual sustainability side of things, like there's no better time than the present to start to, make healthy changes in your own life, build more sustainable habits, take care of yourself. Those are the kinds of things you like should not ever wait until tomorrow to do.
I appreciate both of those responses, because like you said, it is on everyone's mind, and sometimes some of those issues are kind of like, we're thinking about them but almost expecting someone else to do something about it, whereas you guys took the initiative to kind of say, hey, like, you guys can do something, everyone can do something about it, and you kind of presented that to the running community. So I really do like that. So now this book is broken down into 3 different sections. Part 1 is specifically sustaining your runner's mind and body. Part 2 discusses sustaining your running community. Part 3, sustaining your planet. So what I would like to do actually is go through each one and just kind of have a discussion on what each one of those means. You can go into as much or as little detail as you would like, but I think it's important to talk about each one of those there. So the first one, obviously, sustaining your runner's mind and body. I think that's a key point for what most people automatically think about when it comes to running, because they're thinking about the sport of it. So kind of talk about those concepts that you talk about in the book there.
Yeah, I think we wanted to make that a major piece of this, because Zoe will explain this in a minute. She does this beautifully well, and I love hearing it every time she says it, about how these things build upon one another. You know, the individual to the community to the planet, and how they all intersect. But you know, there's a lot of running books out there, and they tend to fall into two camps. One is very much, you want this, go get this, dig in, dig deep, like pain is no pain, no gain. And while that's great, we get a lot of that from everywhere else. I mean, we're constantly being told what you do isn't good enough. We're constantly being told, try harder, dig deeper. And so we felt like many people needed to be reminded that, you know, if you're going through a divorce, or you've just lost a parent, like, it's okay if running just becomes a gentle friend for you, who is there for you to do half an hour a day. And sometimes that may be your life. Other times you might be really trying to train for something and things just aren't coming together. And rather than saying like, oh, body, why are you so dumb? Like, instead you can say like, wow, you're amazing. Like, you know, I appreciate you and I respect you. So we felt it was really important for us to be able to just respect our bodies and really think about all the little things they are constantly doing. And just the more we had that gratitude, and it's not a fluffy way at that. The way I'm explaining it maybe makes it sound a bit like, oh, thank you, body, I really appreciate you. It's not that, but we did want to give people some balance to all the like dig narrative that tends to be out there. And so sustaining, you know, your running body from a individual standpoint means like giving yourself the grace and understanding to recognize that stress is stress, and all you can do is the best you can with the situation that you're in. So Zoe, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but yeah.
That's to piggyback on that. A lot of the no pain, no gain, just dig deep no matter what, those sort of approaches are not backed by evidence. All of the overwhelming majority of research that's coming out shows that things like self-compassion, show that things like mental flexibility, as opposed to just toughness in the face of everything, actually allow people to achieve more, to compete better, to be more resilient, to be grittier. So we really wanted to lean into the research to show people like why these approaches are effective, right? Like, gratitude has shown to be a performance enhancer. Community is shown to be a performance enhancer. Self-compassion is a performance enhancer. So we wanted to just equip people with the tools they need to succeed, rather than like just blindly following along with this cultural narrative of rugged individualism and like, you know, pain is just weakness leaving the body. Like, no, pain is really valuable information your body is giving you. Here's what that can mean, here's how to listen to it, and here's how to increasingly better decisions as you go forward.
So in relation to that, how do you view, especially Tina, I mean, you were so competitive for a long time, but I think there are two sides of that, like maybe two different types of runners. There's the uber competitor side, but then there are also runners that might just enjoy it recreationally and as kind of a stress relief. So how do you kind of relate those two there and kind of relay your message in terms of both sides?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd even say that I think there's two types, and I think it's just where we're at in our lives. Like, okay. I mean, I mentioned to you when we were first jumped on this call, Aaron, that at the gym, my strength coach was having me do this reverse climber thing for as hard as I could for a minute. And I really didn't want to do that. And I'm still a competitive person, but for me at this point in my life, that isn't something that I particularly crave. And so, and I think that's the point, is that sometimes we do have the energy and the space and the brain power to be able to be competitive, and we have to set time aside for that. And we have to be prepared to give the investment into that. And sometimes in your life, you might just need something easy, and that might feel good. And some people might always stay in one side or the other, but the competitive side in particular, as I tried myself, if you keep trying season after season and it just becomes about how far can I push, how hard can I push, and you lose everything else about who you are and what you're doing, that you love, it's going to end up hollow, which is where it got for me, and reached a point where I was like, I'm out. And so I think we can all go through periods of where we feel like we really commit and give our best, but as Zoe mentioned, that's not something that we can do forever. I mean, even if you wanted to do it forever, your body is going to reach a point where you're going to start to age and the decline will happen whether you want it to or not. So I think it's all about like stages of our life and readjusting to the situation that you're in. Okay.
I didn't know if Zoe had anything to add there.
I think that summed it up beautifully.
All right, we can go onto the next section, sustaining your running community. Now, I guess kind of explain. I'll just let you guys kind of explain what you mean by that, and kind of the goal of making sure that everyone is sustaining for the running community.
Yeah, I think a big reason we wanted to write about this is because, again, the research shows that people who are tapped into and really connected with their communities tend to perform better and be able to train longer than peers who don't have a strong community connection. So many running books, again, focus on like what you can do to optimize yourself and improve yourself, but without considering the context of having a really strong, motivated, sort of values-aligned community. A lot of that sort of storytelling falls flat because you're leaving out the larger context of community. So many folks struggle with things like burnout, sort of different like mental issues that come with a feeling of disconnection. We wanted to encourage people to lean into community as a way of navigating some of the pitfalls of that like hyper individualistic focus.
Yeah, and I think I want to add to that when it comes to community, that can mean so many things. That could mean finding a group that to you feels like a safe space where you can truly be yourself. Like, I know a lot of runners are paranoid or worried with good reason about being dropped on a run. Finding a place where you feel you can show up and feel like you are not going to be left behind or get lost or be the one holding everyone back. That might mean finding ways to connect with your community in a way that you've really appreciated. So maybe you've noticed volunteers on the side of the road handing you water and you think, wow, they gave their whole morning to do the whole day. Like in terms of ultra running, the volunteers are out there. Zoe, I mean, sometimes 24 hours they might be out there, and recognizing I'd like to do that. More. I'd like to do that. I'd like to find a way to do that. It might be, giving back in a way where you are pacing someone in the trail or carrying a backpack or a sign on a race. And so each of those methods like level up your life, and they also it's about what feels best for you. I'm a big fan of running as a guide for visually impaired runners or runners with other kinds of challenges, but to someone else, volunteering might be more what feels right for them. It is up to what feels good for you.
I think that's something that is unique and I guess very welcoming about the running community, at least from my experience, is that it really is a community. And I think maybe there might be people that are reluctant to enter in a specific race because, like you said, they don't want to feel embarrassed about their performance, or they don't want to feel, like you said, left behind. But I love this section of the book just because it really emphasizes like how strong you can be as a community as opposed to an individual. So I guess what were some of your other experiences as far as that?
In terms of just ways that we have both given back to the community.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned for me, I run a lot as a guide. I have friends who are visually impaired. I have a friend who has Down syndrome who I like to run with. I just find for me, those are things that really bring me so much joy, watching and getting to spend that time with this human who has overcome so much adversity and challenges. And it's just they're really good people, or the people I've had the opportunity to run with. And I have my community online. I've really loved getting to know, and I've seen some of them on this chat here. Really loved getting to know other people who are, want to do good in the world. And so for me, that's something important for people to find those other like-minded people. I mean, Zoe and I, before we met, were both kind of floating around in the environmental space, not really you know, knowing one another, but once we came together, we had that friendship. And, you know, Zoe and I are incredibly close now. We talk often, and that's a perfect example of this. We talk multiple times a week. We confide in one another when we're having challenges. And so for us, the environmental conversation is the piece that brought us together, but it allowed a beautiful friendship to develop. So I think that's a good example of finding your people.
And like for many people, running, like your relationship to it and what it, like the way that you relate to it will naturally sort of like ebb and flow over the course of an athletic life, right? Sometimes you need to be recovering from a big event. Sometimes you're injured or unwell, or you can't, like you can't always run the most that you would like to run. So having those ways of staying connected to the community that aren't like purely self-serving actually can be a really helpful way of like helping maintain that connection with the sport, right? Like when you're unable to run, it can be really helpful to, you know, go volunteer to support a group runner, to volunteer at the finish line of a race. And I think that it also just comes from a true recognition that we can all only run because of the work and labor of a lot of other individuals. I can only race because tons of other people give up their Saturdays to go and support me. And I think that the best way to sort of like recognize and acknowledge that work is to reciprocate it.
Great. So the third section of this book is one that both of you have mentioned multiple times already. I know this is a big deal for you guys. Sustain your planet. Now, I know there are 4 chapters in this section that talk about, you know, encouraging sustainable events, being an eco-conscious traveler, you know, consuming with care. There's reduce, reuse, recycle. So I'll let you talk about the importance of those, but I think those topics are things that we've been taught from a young age, or at least I was in school, you know, the importance of recycling and caring for your planet. But whether we've become, saying we in general have become lazy or just fearful of, you know, actually taking action for those, people seem to struggle with that for some reason. So maybe you can simplify some of these components as to how you guys really encourage others to be a part of this.
I definitely want to push this over to Zoe, as she is good at explaining this piece.
Yeah, I think so often it's not laziness. People are confused, and that's by design, right? Like we live in a system that is incentivized to make things confusing for us so that we don't change the system. The system is designed to maintain and preserve status quo at every turn. So I think that it's totally normal to feel a little bit confused and unsure about where to best put your efforts. But I think that almost never do I talk to people and they're like, yeah, you know, I'm just lazy and I don't care. Most people do care, and they're highly motivated. They're just confused and they want to make sure they're doing the right thing. So I think it's mostly like perfectionism and a lack of clarity that prevent people from participating. And again, that is a feature and not a bug of a system that is designed to isolate people and to disenfranchise them from changing it. So my prescription is just to get more involved politically. Like that is where your time and energy is going to be the best spent, particularly on the local and regional level. Getting involved to actually change the system in large ways is going to have the most measurable impact, rather than like, I don't know, just, you know, not clicking the no paper, no napkins thing whenever you get like takeout. While you should definitely do that, and you should, you know, be diligent in your individual actions, so often the reason that we focus on these small individual actions is because our system has been designed to displace its own culpability and launder its guilt through us. And I'm not willing to have the system do that. So I think that my primary prescription is going to be to have people get uncomfortable and get political. I know it's not fun to be that, you know, person at the Thanksgiving table who's like, yeah, I'm getting involved in my local like county commissioner's election, or I'm paying really close attention to who's running for city council, or I'm, you know, helping canvass for this candidate for state Congress. But those things are going to have so much more impact as opposed to any like recycling, you know, like all these like really small things just don't move the needle. And so often our focus has been forced on them as a means of distracting us from the issues and the sort of solutions that really matter. That being said, obviously those things do like still do those things. Like this is not to let people off the hook, to not engage and to not commit to sort of like, living in alignment with their own environmental values. But the idea of a personal carbon footprint was literally created by ExxonMobil as part of a marketing scheme to distract us from the fact that they have a significantly larger footprint. The majority of pollution on Earth is created by just like, I think it's 77 companies. So like, overly concerned about like, oh no, well, I have to drive to the trailhead, or oh no, I have to fly for work. That just distracts us from the much larger, more important work that needs to be done. Are these kind of funky, radical issues to bring up in a running book? Absolutely. But when we think of people who are really smart, really motivated, and know how to come together, we thought that the running community was sort of like the most potent audience to receive this information.
Yes. And then I want to, Zoe knows I'm going to bring this up, I want to add from there that, you know, as Zoe said, it is uncomfortable to do those things, to be that person. And I just want to speak to the person who maybe feels like, if your option is that, or I'm not going to do anything, way too intimidating, which it is for some people, then like the individual changes, the small changes, you can take them into your own version. So maybe you're not quite ready to bring it up at the Thanksgiving dinner table, but maybe you say to your parents when you cook for them, hey, I'm going to cook a chickpea masala today because I'm trying to have a meatless day once a week, because it's really important environmentally to trying to you know, cut down on my meat consumption. Or maybe for you it might be you have a friend who's on the PTO at your child's school, and you say, hey, I really think this is important that you bring this up. I found out this about our local community. I would like to bring it up to the school board. So you can find small like stepping stones, even if the big, you know, political versions of that for you currently feel a bit more intimidating. And then step it up to there as you get more comfortable, as you get used to being, as Zoe and I are, or that awkward person bringing things up. But a lot of the time, you know, we can start to plant seeds in people by doing our own versions of what that might be.
Okay. I think that's really interesting because, like you mentioned at the very beginning, I mean, each one of these builds on the other, just kind of encompassing your full mission of just what the book says, sustaining all of this long term. And if we don't take those issues into account, then I mean, who knows how long we will be able to sustain it, right? So, yeah. One of the so there are so many cool things about this book, but one of the cool things that I find in each chapter is there are blocks titled Tina's thoughts or Zoe's thoughts. And then at the end of each chapter, which I think is excellent, you give specific action steps. So not only are you like giving this information for everyone to interpret on their own, you're giving specific ideas and specific steps that people can take after consuming that content. So could you each just kind of speak on those and the importance of those action steps, and maybe just kind of the cool wrinkle of throwing in, you know, Tina's thoughts and Zoe's thoughts?
Yeah, you know. Oh, you go.
No. You go. You go.
Well, we really just wanted to like sort of invite people into our own personal journeys, because they have been imperfect, and we were hopeful that in being vulnerable and inviting people into our own journeys here, they'd be more inspired to undertake their own. We wanted to demonstrate that you do not need to be a perfect ambassador for these things in order to get started sustaining yourself, connecting to your community, or being a more active environmental advocate. So we really wanted to just show through examples like, hey, we don't have this all figured out. We are not perfect emissaries of this message, but that did not stop us from getting started, and it shouldn't stop you either. So we just wanted to give people permission to join along with us. Secondarily, we wanted to give action steps, again, as a means of giving people a place to start and not end their journeys, right? Because in order for us to sort of commit to the large scale climate action that we need to get where we need to go, the steps in our book are not enough to get us there, but they are a really amazing place to get people started, particularly folks that are newer in their journey. And that's sort of the person we were writing this book for. This book was not written for or about Greta Thunberg. It was written for people who again, don't know where to start, don't know where their sort of effort is going to be best spent. And we wanted to just give them really clear, actionable steps so that they can start their journey. But again, this is not like the end point. It is not the, you know, end all be all of where your sort of environmental journey should take you. It's just a place to get started and see what works for you, what feels challenging and hard for you. Lean into that. But we wanted to give people sort of that like easy, lower barrier to entry. Like if this is really like your first time thinking about this, here's a great place to start.
Okay.
I just want to add one more thing, and that is on to what Zoe was saying at the beginning there, and that is that the book is entitled Becoming a Sustainable Runner because of exactly what Zoe said there. We haven't got this all figured out, and even if every person read the book, did every single thing on that list, it's still, as Zoe said, we wouldn't be where we need to be. But we wanted to make it becoming a sustainable runner. We wanted to show that realness in us, to show that we're still trying to figure this out too. Technology is obviously advancing, so we don't know where the end point is, if there ever is one, probably not. But we wanted to use the word becoming to show that, yeah, here's us, get to know us, but we're also just at times confused, but also at times unsure where to start. So here are some things you can begin with, if you know, depending on wherever you are at.
Okay, excellent. I think that probably is a good spot to go ahead and wrap it up for today. Like I said, you guys are very busy women. I definitely want to be respectful of your time, but I also appreciate the discussion that you were able to have today to kind of give listeners and myself a little more insight on exactly what's in the book. If you haven't got your copy yet, go ahead and check it out. It's on our website, us.humankinetics.com. You can find it on Amazon. I'm sure that in your local bookstore as well. So from there, I will give you guys the last word again to kind of wrap this up and maybe let everyone know where they can kind of keep up with your journey and all the amazing things that you guys are doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we're kind of here right now. We're both on Instagram.
Yep.
There's the book. So that would be, we would love the support, but also love to support you in your journey. Again, this ties back in community, work best together. So let us, you know, do that for one another. And we have set up the website becomingasustablerunner.com. So internationally can find wherever the book is for them easiest to get a hold of. And the last thing I just want to say is, like, you matter. I know it can feel like your one decision, your one choice, your one person doesn't make any kind of difference. But the one thing that those 100 companies that are responsible for 71% of emissions do not want us to do is organize, come together and talk about this. So you matter. And I know it doesn't feel like you do all the time, but you do. So just, if you need that reminder, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, just want to emphasize that you do matter, and there is something that you can give to this process that no one else can give. You have unique talents, connections, and abilities that no one else has. It'd be a real shame to not contribute that to the really important work that needs to be done. We're just so grateful for all the support we've gotten on this journey, and we look forward to supporting other folks however we can.
Excellent message there. Excellent message in the book. Again, everything that we talked about today and even more, so much more in the book, so much more in detail of everything that we talked about. So again, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks.